All right, welcome to week 4 of Homeschooling with Classic Stories. So you already know the drill. Take it out of the box, take it out of the jacket. And so let's go ahead and get started. We're on to our book. And so for today, we are back taking a look at Peter Rabbit. So even though we covered Peter Rabbit already, we're looking at Peter Rabbit plus the addition of Benjamin Bunny. So we will be returning all the way up here to Mr. McGregor's garden. And so we're back down here. If you're talking to your child about the directions, remember north, east, south, and west. We will be over here dealing with Peter Rabbit, who again is in the south. And he is also in the southeast, depending on how strongly you want to do your compass. Then, of course, we'll be moving sort of to the bottom, which is the south. And then he will be traveling to the west to stay in the south. And then, of course, we will be traveling up to Mr. McGregor's garden, which is further north, but on the whole grand scheme of things is still in the southern part of our map. Anyway, be sure you talk to your child about the compass. If you want to use non-directional words, more standard giving directions words like left and right, that might be okay too. It's really depending on what you want to focus on. Let's go ahead and take a look. We're on Benjamin Bunny this week. All right, so let's go ahead and see the tale of Benjamin Bunny. As I've already pointed out to you, we are revisiting Peter Rabbit. This can be a little bit confusing because this is week 4, and we did Peter Rabbit in week 1. So, if you recall from week 1, we did act out the story a bit. So, it might be good to have your child see what they can remember from the story. Whatever they remember about Peter Rabbit is fine. It can be very useful to go all the way back in your book, and instead of reading the story, just have a look at the different Peter Rabbit pictures, because that can really help your child refresh their memory as to what happened to Peter Rabbit in Mr. McGregor's garden. The most important takeaway is, what happened to Peter's clothing? So he loses his clothing in Mr. McGregor's garden. What happened to it? So be sure that you ask that question before starting on this kind of secondary part of the story about Benjamin Bunny. Okay, so we see in our picture Benjamin Bunny. He is a standard looking bunny, but look what his coat looks like. Do we remember what Peter's coat looks like compared to Benjamin's coat? So make sure you're pointing out the colors. Ask your child about the different colors. And you'll notice, of course, that there's still shoes on this bunny. And we'll remember then, because we've already talked about clothes, Peter lost his shoes. Where did he lose them? Okay, so that's how we're going to start with our introduction. You'll also want to make sure that you remember who were Peter's siblings. And so you'll talk about he has a mom, and then he has Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail. So he has 3 siblings as well. Then you're also going to have this idea of cousins. So Benjamin's aunt and cousins. So we know that there's his aunt, Benjamin's aunt, and his cousins, even though they're Peter's siblings. So this part is where I like to stop, and I like to actually draw out, if you have a piece of paper or a whiteboard or something, this is where I actually like to draw a little family tree. I think that this is very helpful to kind of introduce one of the themes for this week, which is talking about basic family trees. So I do ask questions about how they are related. That can be very helpful at this point. Okay, and so we've moved on. What about some clothes? What is he wearing here? Okay, so we see that Peter, he is just wearing a handkerchief. Oh no. And we learned that a scarecrow has it. Scarecrows, what is their job? Their job is to scare crows. What's something that you're scared of? So make sure you're asking questions throughout that. If your child would like to act out the story, you'll notice that this has a lot of action bits to it, so you can have them act. But do make sure that you ask a question about the scarecrow, and the scarecrow wearing the clothes. It's meant to scare crows, but what's something that your child is scared of? If it is fall in the area that you live in, or if there are just generally scarecrows about, be sure that you also talk about, where have you seen a scarecrow? Have you seen a scarecrow? It is currently Halloween coming where we live, so there are some scarecrow decorations. So making sure that we know what these things are, because my child will never see a scarecrow in a field where we live, but talking about where you have seen them. All right, so moving on, we're still very focused on the clothes. So here we see some little footprints, and you can talk about who made the footprints, and then asking about in the story about who's wearing the footprints, who has made the footprints. Who would have done that? And then we have them taking apart the scarecrow and who's wearing which element of the clothing. And so Peter has his blue jacket back, and then, we have a hat now for Benjamin. Please do keep in mind this word. Tam O'Shanter is one that I did not know. It's probably a word that you do not know, or maybe you do, I don't know. But hat is the idea here. If you want to change it within the story, that's fine. Or if you want to address it head on, that's also great. All right. Now these rabbits, after they have fetched some clothing, what are they going to do next? And then if your child is able to identify the pictures in here, that's great, of the different vegetables. If you want to, you can talk about what things your child likes to eat in the garden. What do you like to have from the garden? What do you not like is even a pretty decent question to go with these. Peter is dropping some onions. How many onions did he drop? Then, of course, we can do some more counting, talking about the mice that we see. So what is it that they are doing? If your child is not really sure what a cherry stone is, you can talk about that. It doesn't really matter to the story, though. Then, of course, you can continue talking about what's he doing as he's walking along. He is losing the onions. If your child wants to act this out, this can be very fun to do. Just have them put toys into even a blanket if you don't have like a handkerchief, and have them slowly drop things. That seems to be super delightful. So that's an option as well for acting out the story. Okay, who do we have next? So we have a cat that's coming up next. And when you go to talk about the cat, you can talk about their surprise at seeing the cat. Why are they surprised to see the cat? So you can talk about that. You can talk about where do they hide, so address the basket. We also see that the cat sits there for 5 hours. If your child is able to tell time, you can take a look at your clock. Note the time that it currently is while you're reading the story. If it were 5 hours from now, what time would it be? And then count around the clock to the 5-hour mark. That's when the cat would leave. So you can address that with your child. Okay. All right. And then, of course, we have old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. Who is this? So if you have not yet added him to your family tree, make sure that he has been added to the family tree. All right. And this is where things get not great, or depending on how you run your house. You can sort of, you can act this out. That is entirely, that is entirely an option for you. It might be better in your family, if you so choose, to talk about when you do something wrong, how do we usually punish you in this house? This particular scene is a problem at our house. And so we talk about that hitting is not okay. And we do talk about that directly. This is very much going to depend on how you run your house and the laws of your country or region. So this picture often gives parents some pause. I do want to make sure that you see it before you try and read this with your child, so you are not surprised. Okay, so then we carry on, depending on however you want to address this. But the children have been bad. They should not have gone to Mr. McGregor's garden, and obviously the uncle had to save them. So then we're almost to the end, talking about what is left of the scarecrow, and make sure your child notices that the hat was left at the scarecrow. And if you want to address the footprints issue, you are absolutely welcome to. And then talking about how funny it is about the cat. So, in the end, you can finish off by talking about who these who these rabbits are. And of course, if you would like to talk about folding, because they are folding, this might be a really great time to teach your child how to do a basic fold on a blanket, because that's what you see them doing here. So if your child is not already helpful with certain elements of the square-based or rectangular-based laundry, this is a really good time to teach this skill at this point. So that is some acting work that you can do. Anyway, I hope that this has been helpful for having you see what you can do as you're reading the story, some things that you can talk about with your child. Obviously, things like shapes, colors, and numbers are always up for grabs, no matter how you choose to interpret the morals of this story. And then, of course, next week we'll be reading The Tale of Two Bad Mice. So I will see you next time. Bye!